4.5, graphs of sine and cosine functions. What we should learn: how to graph basic sine and cosine functions, how to use amplitude and period to adjust our graph. First, let's talk about what a sine function looks like. It's by doing a basic graph. Starting off, here's my little table. Here's the quadrantal angles just to make it easier. We're just going to use the unit circle to find the values. Remember, when you use a unit circle, it's like an XY chart, so we're just going to use the points, especially if we fall on the quadrantal angles, the ones on the axes. We're just going to use these points right here. Sine of 0. So you go here to 0, and it's a point. It's one of these 2 points. Which one is sine? Sine. Sine is the y value. We're just going to use the y value on all these. And at 0, we get 0. That's our first point. And then at sine of pi over 2 right here, and we're just using the y value because we're going up the unit circle basically. We're going to get the point of 1. But pi over 2, we're going to go at 1. Like that. Then we're going to go down to pi. Sine of pi is just the y value right here. And then we're going to connect this like that. Sine of 3 pi over 2. We go down to 3 pi over 2. Negative 1 right there. Like that. And then sine of 2 pi, we went back up the circle. We get 0 again. And that's our sine graph. It looks like a little wave. And the cool thing about this is that it keeps on repeating. If I went to another point, if I went to 5 pi over 2, you just go back up here, you're back on the circle. It's always been the exact same points. So this graph goes on forever and ever in both directions. Keep on doing that sine wave. So that's what a sine graph looks like. And we're going to quickly do the same thing with cosine. Points back again, 1, 0, 0, 1, negative 1, 0, 0, negative 1. Let's make this one, let's make it a little nicer to look at. Okay, like that. Cosine is the x value. Sine, sine's y, cosine must be x. At 0, we're at 1 actually. We're starting up here. Pi over 2, if we go up this graph, we're going to be at 0. We're coming down. And then at pi, we come down here. Remember the x value, negative 1. Pi is negative 1. Looks like this. Then we go down to 3 pi over 2. We're at 0. And then finally go back up to a complete circle at 1. Like that. Then we get a cosine graph. Now here's the thing. But just like sine, if you keep on going around that circle, it's going to be the exact same picture over and over again. Forever. If you look at these two graphs together, they're actually the same graph. A sine graph that starts in the middle and then goes up and comes back down. A cosine graph starts at the top of the amplitude. Top of the little curve right there and comes down and comes back up again. If you look at this part right here, right, that's just a sine graph. It's right there. They're like the same picture, just starting at different locations. But that's a basic sine and cosine graph. You can see here, and then it goes through all this stuff, like the domain and range. They go on forever, repeating the exact same picture, negative infinity to positive infinity for the domain. The range is super important. We're doing a unit circle. All we ever get to is 1 and negative 1 is the max. If you look at the range, it's always negative 1, positive 1. The period, we'll talk more about this in a second, but the period is how long it takes to repeat. Remember, these are the same pictures over and over again. Look right here, like this is my sine graph. After that, it starts repeating itself. We call that a period. How long does it take to repeat itself? So from here to here is our period. X-intercepts, they keep on happening over and over again. That's why it's n pi. Y function, the y-intercept's at 0. It is an odd function. You can see here, it repeats itself like that. And then origin symmetry. Over here, same idea. It's an even function. This one could be cut in half. This one you can't cut in half, but this one you can. Let's talk about amplitude and period. Amplitude is how high it gets. From here to here is the amplitude. So like in our basic graphs we just did, our amplitude was 1. That's how high we went. And we're talking about why that happened and how we know that from the graph. So the amplitude is a number in front of the sine cosine picture. And it's always positive. This is telling us how far we are from the center of the graph to the highest point or to the lowest point. Like over here, our amplitude, notice they don't have 1, so it's 1. Even though it doesn't show you. And 1. And it's all the same. It's like, how is it from the middle of the graph to the top of the graph? How much is that? That's the amplitude. Next is period. Period is about how long it takes to repeat itself. It's a formula for it. Period has to do with the number next to your x, coefficient of the x term. We consider that b, and the generic period is 2 pi. If we want to find the period for any function, any sine or cosine function, it's 2 pi over b. Let's go back and check that with our original graph. Look on the first graph, our period's from here to here. That's how long it took to repeat itself. It went down and back up to here again. Then it starts repeating. Now it's 2 pi. If you look at our equation, we didn't have a b. B here was 1. Our period was 2 pi over 1. 2 pi over b, which is 2 pi over 1, which is 2 pi. That's how long it took to repeat itself. Same thing over here. No b, or period was 2 pi over 1, 2 pi. And again, it takes a whole 2 pi to repeat itself. That's period and that's amplitude. And those are the basics we need to know to graph a sine or cosine function. We're going to sketch the graph with 2 sine x by hand. We're going to do it from negative pi to 4 pi. A middle period from negative pi to 4 pi. Let's go 1, 2, and 1, 2. The two things you generally want to find are the amplitude and the period. My amplitude here is 2. And my period is 2 pi over b. I have no b, so it's just 1. 2 pi over 1, 2 pi. We need that, and we also need, what's the basic sine graph? When we do this in my head, a basic sine graph starts in the origin. It ends at the end of its period at the origin. You always start and end at the same spot for a period. That's when it repeats itself. Halfway between is where it crosses. And in between these two, halfway is my amp. And in between the last two, halfway is my low part of my amp. So that's a basic sine function. And again, it does repeat itself both directions. We're going to do a sine graph. That's a basic sine graph. Over here, I'm going to start at 0. My period is 2 pi, so that's my next endpoint right here. That means halfway is pi. My amplitude is 2. So I'm going to go all the way up to 2. That's going to go up halfway between these two is my highest point. Let's estimate it. Halfway between these two is my lowest point. Like that. And that is our sine function. It looks a little funky because I did this by hand. But it does want to graph it all the way to 4 pi. So I got to go one more rotation over here. First and do the exact same thing again. I started here. I would end 2 pi later. Okay, that's my period. Where's 2 pi end at? 4 pi. Halfway is where I cross. In between these two is my highest point. In between these two is my lowest point. So this is another rotation. And I also got to go back a bit. We start here. Our period is 2 pi. I'm going to go back 2 pi. I actually need to go back to here. That's where our point would be. Halfway between is my other point right there. Now, if I started here, where we go left to right. If I started here, halfway between these two would be my highest point. And halfway between these two would be my lowest point. I only care about this part from here on. So I'm just going to continue this part on. And there's my sine graph from negative pi to 4 pi. We're going to do these real quickly with different. Let's talk about how to do a cosine graph. Everything's going to be the same. We're going to do this faster. We have amp. And we have period. When you do a cosine graph starts on top. Starts at the amplitude. And then you always end at the same spot. Wherever the period ends, that's your other spot. Halfway between is the lowest point, the low amp. And halfway between these two is where you cross. And halfway between these two is where you cross. That gets you a cosine graph before it starts repeating itself. Let's do these on the same graph. I'll do one in green real quick. So for that one, the amp is 1/2 and my period is 2 pi. Because 2 pi over b, but the b is 1. So we'll start with the cosine. I'm going to start at 1/2. There is my amp. And then we end at 2 pi. We have to go to this next point. I always start at the amp, end at the amp, 2 pi, so my period. Halfway would be my low amp. Halfway is right here. That's my low amp. Negative 1/2. And then halfway between these two is where I cross. So we have pi over 2. Halfway between these two is where I cross. 3 pi over 2. And there's our tiny 1/2 cosine graph. So you can see what the amplitude does. Really isolates how high and low the cosine graph goes. The next one, 3 cosine. My amp here is 3. And my period here is also 2 pi. But we're going to start at the amp. 1, 2, 3. We'll also end at the amp. Halfway is the lowest amp. The amp on the low end down here. Negative 3. Halfway between these two is where I cross. It'll be right there. Halfway between these two is where I cross, which is right there. And I get something that looks like this. So you can see what the amp does to the graph, how high and low it goes. Okay, we talked about period. Next, let's talk about what the period does. Let's do an example of the period. So this one, we're going to do the same thing. Let's make this one that's a little easier to see. We'll go by halves here. My amp here is 1. My period is 2 pi over b. So my b in this case is 1/2. 2 pi over 1/2. When you have like a fraction divided by a fraction, it looks scary. I just think about this as a divide sign. I rewrite it 2 pi divided by 1/2. And the way you divide is multiply by reciprocal. It's 2 pi times 2 over 1. 4 pi. That's my period, 4 pi. Which means on this graph, let me fix it a bit. Make that 4 pi. I wish I had it nicer than that, but that's what we got to work with. So we're going to 0, pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi. Okay, so for graphing this one, it's a sine graph. Remember, sine graph starts at the origin, ends at the origin, and halfway. Looks like that. So we're going to start at 0. We're going to end at 4 pi. Halfway would be 2 pi. Halfway between these two is my amp, which is 1. Halfway between these two is my amp, which is negative 1. And there we go. Something like that. Again, it's kind of hard because I just redid this graph, but it goes much further than our normal graph. Our normal graph would end at 2 pi. This one goes double the distance. But that's how you do period. And that's the video.